Hi there, welcome to a Lemon Amiga special. In fact, we go back to the past and we take a look at the history behind our cartoon intro. And it all started when I first joined Lemon Amiga way back in 2009. I eventually took over the Lemon Amiga Games competition, and in the meantime I started producing videos. And the idea of the videos was just to see how far I could get after so many years, and to get as far as I could to show as much of the game as possible, not necessarily to show my playing skill. And the one thing that you can see ripped is actually some waves which I found on the 4th edition of Dizzy, Magic Line Dizzy on the Amiga, and I copied and pasted those in. But it became obvious pretty soon that this had to be created on a PC, and I began with the game Hunter, and I ripped that off the Hunter game and I stuck that onto the basic background just to give me a demo of what that would look like. You can see the hills that are already forming in the background, and the tree and the house. So far that's 2 games ripped. Remember the waves here, and here's a close-up of those waves. And I actually had a party ripping from Dizzy 4. Here's a tree from Magic Land Dizzy, and I also ripped the main Dizzy character as well a little later on. But for now, over our basic main introduction, I then extended that to widescreen because I realised that the old 4.3 didn't really work except on the games themselves, and now we animate those waves directly from the rip of the game. And as you can see with animation, it really does take on a life of its own, and of course some clouds wouldn't hurt either, and yes, I ripped these clouds off from Magic Land Dizzy. So those are the clouds, and the exception, of course, there is always one. This sun was taken from Super Frog. If you add those elements together, what you end up with is a number of clouds on a number of layers, all merging away on the horizon, and you can see those moving at different speeds, which is great. And when they overlap each other, well, they're supposed to overlap, but I didn't want too many clouds in the background because of course a nice open sky invites lots of sprites. And at this stage in 2011 I had no idea how this would eventually turn out, and given these humble beginnings, you can see I could have gone either way and added things on different parts of the screen, maybe zoomed up into the sky and panned around that way, but eventually you can see, well, that's the end of the roll. Eventually that's as far as I got by adding clouds at that point. So if we take a look by adding all the other elements, the Hunter will be cut out of the Hunter game. You can see I actually cut out the house and the tree and the landscape separately, and then I could have characters moving ahead and behind those. Here's another rough demo of what that would look like, and one of my favourite games of all time, it has to be said, is Vroom on the Amiga. So on the French course of Vroom you can see a nice horizon, and I also ripped out that hot air balloon so that then animates. And I also borrowed, you can see, the signposts from Lemon Amiga, and those were put onto the horizon, as well as the flowers, which I believe came from Lemon Amiga but originally Super Frog, as did this one, which I cut out from the Super Frog game. And here is an isolated background that I found in Super Frog, and you can see the tree from Super Frog actually made it into the final version. You can see the tree branch just on the corner, and after adding even more C elements from the Lemon Amiga website, as well as these 2 characters that I managed to find on there, then those elements overlaid onto this demo eventually began to flesh things out. You can see with the background now faded with a few bolts on the horizon, and let's fade those trees into view as well. You can see the Super Frog trees melting into my jagged hill horizon. But at this stage, when I began to rip sprites for the game, not every attempt worked. You can see this monkey is actually from the Addams family, along with the main sprite Gomez himself. You can see that's not quite perfectly ripped, but by recording some footage and zooming in on that, I could basically box out those characters. But I found as soon as I tried to take those into the editor and try to matte out that background, then all the black disappeared as well. And even though these characters do appear in early versions of this animation, matting out the background, it didn't always work. And sometimes that had to be done pixel by pixel, and sometimes it could be got away with. And in this game I managed to find a nice solid background in the game. You can see some game elements still remaining, but if the game has a nice solid background, I can usually blank that off and mask that away, like Dizzy again from Dizzy 4, and of course the Lemmings. If I can find that great background, then I can simply take that away, and this is what you get. And this of course was perfect for the intro, because that ground, you can see that grass disappears, and in the intro you may notice that that stage disappeared once those lemmings blow up. And you may notice that some things had to be edited in post. You can see this rip of Super Frog. When I isolate that character, it's actually stationary, so I have to edit that myself. And now we can see, even without the Lemon Amiga logos, that some things are now being animated, and the flip that you saw from Tearaway Thomas was completely animated in post-production. I basically took frames of that. This bird you can see is from Exile AGA, which I haven't quite got around to reviewing just yet. Sensible World of Soccer, and yes, the Lemon logo. So when you add those things together with even more foreground elements, and the hot air balloon that we found in Vroom now animates, and that boat actually moves up and down as well, bobs around. So now you can see now with the logo, and that's actually split off at the moment, but as I began to use this, it was supposed to be the idea that I'd add the games that I was reviewing to this introduction and point those out. And for that it was essential to have a stock number of characters at the beginning so that it wasn't completely boring. And you can see the Tearaway Thomas actually misses its animation frames there, because I had to fix those a little later. But for the most part, that was the introduction. So if you add in the basic introduction that I managed to find, the planet spinning around in Motion Studio, which I no longer have, but I still use that graphic, and you can see the plane came from that same package as well. I merged those two things together, and that's a bit like those classic movie intros that you saw in the 1930s. Here's some raw footage of the Alien Fish Finger, which was the first official game that I tried to use this on.
Lemon Amiga presents a Play Giant video review. Sit back and enjoy the show.
Well, a little late on cue there. That actually goes behind the Super Frog character due to overlay problems at that stage, but that was the very first introduction to that cartoon intro. Apart from Locomotion, which it actually wasn't possible to rip great graphics from and put them in because of the view perspective of that thing, I actually took game rips from all the following games that I played in sequence, including Roll or Die, Yogi's Great Escape, or in this case I think that came from Yogi's Big Cleanup, not quite sure. And this one again was taken from Turrican 2, and I had to find a nice clear space in the background and do all this editing in post-production. And so that's why the character moves along. Sometimes I could rip things directly from the game itself, and as you saw as part of the intro to this very documentary, I managed to find this little section from Bubble Bobble, and most of the screen was blanked out by blocks, and so that's why most of this is matted out. And as Bubble Bobble backgrounds are black, then you can see the edge of that matted area if I jump out of that. But somewhere in this footage is the part that I actually ripped, and I placed the Bubble character on top of the building, the actual house from Hunter, and he then floats off and has his own adventures. But you can see this was the original rip that I took from Bubble Bobble. If I take out and insert all the blanked areas, you can see how difficult it was, or how easy it was, to rip that character. and the bubbles themselves caused a problem a little later going outside of that box, but again they were fixed in post-production. Moving on to the next character, we find a helicopter which is only just being reviewed. That's cannon fodder. And now you can find a submarine from, guess which game, Blood Money. And we can also find a great tank that was ripped directly from Dune 2. The tank only moves in one direction and then moves in a diagonal, so again all the other pieces of action that thing does was done in post. And no prizes for guessing Dynablaster was ripped as well. Mask out the see-through areas, the chromed areas, using black, and we crop very close to the icons so there's no trailing areas, and it's very hard, in fact impossible, to spot that those trailing areas appear. But yes, by adding these extra layers we can get rid of them and trim up that icon. Thank you very much for viewing this history of the characters in the amazing cartoon instruction. Hope to see you again soon.